Well, it's the Boston Fleet and Chris Sparre versus the Vancouver Golden Eyes and their head coach, Brian Idelski. I'm going to go with Brian I. PWHL Recap on Sports for Beginners presents Fleet versus Golden Eyes, and it starts right now. Welcome to Sports for Beginners. This is the show where I cover the Pittsburgh Penguins, Toronto Blue Jays, and take you on a journey through the world of sports. From the fans' perspective, here is your host, Scott McGregor. Let's have some fun. It's the PWHL Recap here on Sports for Beginners, the podcast. Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, and specifically ladies. Welcome in. Game 3 of our select game coverage this season. Season 2 of our select coverage. Season 3 of our PWHL hockey coverage. Today's topic of conversation, as mentioned, one matchup of the 4 teams, I should say, that took place to open up the December month of PWHL hockey. It's our third coverage of Boston Fleet head coach Chris Sparre and the Boston Fleet. We've talked about Boston versus Toronto, in which they played spoiler, and we even talked Boston Fleet versus Montreal Victoire. Boston has won twice since we've covered them. Make that 3 in a row as they win their inaugural matchup against the Golden Eyes and Brian I, the head coach of your Vancouver Golden Eyes. Well, since we off the jump covered the coaches, Chris Sparre and Brian I, Brian A, no, I said that, Brian I, not sure why it came up as the word I, but anyways, that's besides the point. Let's keep it rolling. So the venue for this game, the inaugural game between the Golden Eyes and the Fleet, was at Agganis Arena in Agganis Arena, I should say. Sorry if I'm pronouncing the name wrong here for those of you in Massachusetts. By the way, shout out to our listeners in Boston, Massachusetts, and everywhere else in the Massachusetts state. Apologies if I'm pronouncing the arena wrong. Anyways, Boston Fleet was home against the Vancouver Golden Eyes. It's the second time in our coverage we are covering a home game for Boston Fleet. They win this one the same way they beat the Montreal Victoire. Our final score of that one, Montreal 0, Boston picking up the 2 points to open the season at home. Game 2 at home of this 30-game season, I should say, both on the road and at home, with some games as neutral site games. They win game 2 as a home squad as they prepare for battle with the Minnesota Frost on Sunday, but they win game 2 at home by the same score, 2-0. We're about to find out how that all happened momentarily. On the last recap we did, SienaT Tapani scored in a 3-1 win on the road against Toronto to spoil Toronto's home opener, their third home opener in franchise history, and yet it was spoiled. All right, let's get to the game of conversation, because there's another game that went down on this day, Wednesday, December 3rd, 2025. Today is December the 4th, and we'll get into the action still to come in the week of Tuesday, December 2nd to Sunday, December 7th. 2025. We'll get to that momentarily. It is indeed, overall, it is the third week of hockey action in the PWHL. That week again running from December 2nd to December 7th. Week number 4 of the month of December running from Tuesday, December 16th, all the way to a Sunday triple header on December 20th. Find out all about that later in our show. All right, let's get down to it, shall we? Yeah, here we go. So as I mentioned, the head coaches of the game for this one, Brian I, and no, not the word I, just so you know, like as if you were looking to what's on your face, rather, just to make sure. And I'm not trying to be funny or anything like that. I'm trying to be serious. Anyways, moving on. Brian I takes on Chris Sparre. It's the first season for both of these head coaches. Yes, this would be his first season. Anyways, moving on. The records for both teams so far this season, the Golden Eyes coming into this game have lost 2 games in regulation, won a game in regulation. Well, actually, that was one in overtime, but they've lost twice since then going into this game. Boston, meanwhile, comes into this game with a undefeated 2-0 record, not counting the overtime losses or overtime wins, or rather shootout losses. Regardless, that is your record for Boston and Vancouver coming into this game. The officiating crew for this one, which was a night game, our referees were Chad and Gales. Let me share the screen here so it's easier to see who the officiators were. 1 second, here we go. And of course, this is bringing up the PWHL.com. If you want the English version of this, if you want the English version of the entire thing, make sure you add, when you are going into the game center or the schedule or the website in general, make sure you add EN in one of your slashes for English. For French, make sure you add FR in the description of your browser. Anywho, our officials, here we go. The first referee was Amanda Tossiani, wearing the number 21. Amanda, if I pronounce your last name wrong, I apologize. Number 25, and also a referee, was Chad Ingales. I'm going to go with Chad I. Sorry, Chad, if I pronounce your last name wrong. Wearing number 25. What we call in the NHL the linesmen, referred to in the women's game as the lines person. Those were Stephanie Gargano, Stephanie Garganin, I should say. You know what, Stephanie? I'm going to go with Stephanie G, just in case I pronounce your last name wrong. I already noticed in the last 2 times I did it, I didn't get it right. Maybe I'll try a 3rd time later in the show, but we'll see. She was wearing number 76, Stephanie Garganin. Oh, I didn't say it right. I didn't say the last name right. I did say the first name, but I didn't state the last name right. Okay, moving on. Next up would be Patrick Puzo. Patrick D. We'll go with Patrick D, wearing the number 77. So we had 25, 21, 76, and 77 in pinstripes. Patrick Dapozo, Stephanie G, Amanda Tossani, the main referee official for this game. The game started 10 minutes after 7 p.m. Eastern, and of course, 6 p.m. Central, and 4 p.m. Pacific. We'll get to the other times another time, but the game ended 29 minutes after 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central. It took 2 hours and 19 minutes to complete and was in front of 3,516 fans in attendance. And we're going to take care of that quickly before we get down to the nitty-gritty, which we're going to get down to right now. This for the regular season in terms of games, which is 120 regular season games. When you look at all 8 teams and 30 games equivalent to all 8, including the Golden Eyes and the Seattle Torrent. This is, of course, our first look at the Vancouver Golden Eyes here on our PWHL Recap, but it's our 3rd look at the 2025-2026 Boston Fleet. And they did pretty well, despite staying out of the box for the entire game. Penalties did go to Vancouver. They went to Hannah Miller as we start off with our penalty summary. Now that we're into the game, I'll get to the goaltenders, which we normally got to right at the beginning, but we are taking a bit of a change up here, as this is an inaugural team that we're taking a look at against the Boston Fleet, original 6 team in their 3rd season. Anyways, Hannah Miller with the first penalty to Vancouver, coming in at 9 minutes and 1 second in to the first period. 2 minutes for holding for Hannah Miller. She's wearing for the Vancouver Golden Eyes the number 34. Number 26, Brooke McHugh. I'm going to go with Brooke MCQ. Sorry about that. Receives a 2-minute minor for tripping at 18 minutes and 28 seconds. So the only power plays of the game going to the Boston Fleet. We'll touch on that momentarily. But now let's go to the goals, as there were only 2 penalties, both of them called in the first period. One late at 18 minutes, 28 seconds. One at 9 minutes, 1 second, which went to Hannah Miller. 2 minutes for holding was the call. The first goal of the game went to Abby Newhook, who would be the difference maker until the third period of play. Her second goal of the season, Hadley H. and Theresa S. picking up their first assists of the season. Abby Newhook, second goal of the season for her, gives Boston a 1-0 lead. Now this girl, one of the strikers in the Scepter game, Jill Saulnier, or Jill S as I call her, picks up her first goal of the season. She did so all by herself, and it comes at 6 minutes and 40 seconds of the third period. Abby Newhook picking up the goal, her second of the year, at 5 minutes and 2 seconds. So Boston beat Vancouver the same way they beat the Victoire in the opening game of the season. They beat the Vancouver Golden Eyes in their first showdown 2-0. Why don't we take this time before we take a quick commercial break to let you in on who the starting goaltenders were. So who went between the pipes? Let's go to that now, since we've taken some time to not go through that yet. And I'll keep it on the shared screen as we go. So for the Boston Fleet, at backup would be number 39, Abby Levy, in backup if needed. And for the third game in a row, the Boston Fleet go to Aerin Frankel to get the start. I like to call her the Green Monster. Now, I'm not saying she is. What I am saying is I like to call her the Green Monster. And she's done pretty well. 2 shutouts at home. One against the 2 shutouts at home. Once, I'm not sure why it keeps saying shoutouts. 2 shutouts is what I said at home against Montreal and now Vancouver. In goal for Vancouver, speaking of that, is number 38, Aerin Mashmeyer. We get our first look at Aerin Mashmeyer playing against the Fleet. This time she's playing for the Vancouver Golden Eyes. Golden Eyes, I should say. She is backed up by former Toronto Scepters goaltender, Kristen Campbell. Kristen Campbell in at backup, wearing the number 50. The number 38 belongs to Aerin Mashmeyer, who would get the start against Aerin Frankel. Not sure why that says Franco. I meant to say Frankel. There we go. Frankel. Okay. Anyways, Aerin Frankel and Abby Levy taking on Kristen Campbell and Aerin Mashmeyer for the game. Now, I know I kind of screwed that up earlier, but that's okay. We're working on it as we go along. All right, time for us to take a break. But when we come back, a look at the schedule so far in December for the week of December 2nd to December 7th. We saw Minnesota beat Ottawa. Find out what the final score of that one was. And congratulations to the Seattle Torrent. They beat the New York Sirens. The final score of Frost versus Charge, Torrent versus Sirens, coming up after our first commercial break of the show, which we are going to get to right now. Also coming up after that break, and we're going to do it right off of the top of the break. Who's lucky to grab the 3 stars of the game? You're going to find out our 3 stars of this game from Wednesday night, December 3rd, 2025, in mere moments. When we return, we'll do it right off the top of our first break, which we'll get to. And also want to remind you that the women's hockey play of the game also coming up, as well as what's next for Boston, what's next for PWHL Recap, and of course, what's next for the Vancouver Golden Eyes. Also, later, we will preview what's next for Sports for Beginners as Season 4 of the podcast edges closer to its closing. Reminder that this show, Bills postgame and Penguins postgame, as well as Dolphins postgame, will continue throughout the hiatus of Season 4 as we go to Season number 5 of Sports for Beginners. But with all that said and done, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, 3 stars of the game, out-of-town scoreboard, game stats, and the play of the game. Those are next, right after this. Stick with us. Don't go anywhere. There's more great conversations and content right around the corner. Sports for Beginners will be right back in a moment. Hey, what's up, Penguins fans? Join me, Scott McGregor, host of Sports for Beginners, Penguins Postgame, and Weekly in Sports, as well as other content on Sports for Beginners. Join me weekly next season for Penguins Weekly Recap. We'll break down the stars of the week, the victories, some of the losses, hear from players and coaches after practice, and get you set up for the next upcoming week of Penguins hockey action. Don't miss Penguins Weekly Recap, coming soon to Sports for Beginners, the podcast, a brand new show dedicated to Penguins hockey, only on Sports for Beginners. Let's go, Pens!
SienaT Radio will never give you up. They will never let you down, nor will they run around or desert you. So join Nick Astley for The Melting Pot every Saturday on SienaT Radio. Hang on a minute. He's not Nick Astley. Oh, jings, I've done it wrong. Anyway, just join Nick for The Melting Pot on SienaT Radio.
Take another look with Gerda Felix and Melanie Taddeo Malo. Two powerful women of diverse backgrounds having genuine, unique, and uncomfortable conversations that everyone needs to have. Join Melanie and Gerda for conversations about what is missing from human connections.
Now, let's take you back to the action. To the rink and field we go. We find Scott McGregor.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to PWHL Recap. Toronto, Boston, and want to make sure I get that right. Boston and Vancouver, the topic of conversation. Coming up on our show in moments, we will talk about where we are headed next in the PWHL Recap coverage. Who knows? Maybe you'll get a triple dose of Sports for Beginners coverage this weekend with, of course, a hockey game to recap between the Penguins and the Lightning tonight. And of course, we have some great action that we're going to talk to you about in just a little bit. Still to come on the December schedule. We get the Battle of Ontario tonight on TSN in the PWHL. We'll talk about that momentarily. All right. And a reminder, you can actually also catch Thomas's edition of a show we are going to, or of a game we're going to show you in just moments, between the Seattle Torrent, not the Seattle Torrent, the Minnesota Frost and the Ottawa Charge. The Torrent played during our game, Boston and Vancouver. The Torrent played the New York Sirens in the nightcap of the doubleheader. We'll talk about those games momentarily. But keeping it to this game, here we go. Let's go and talk. Before we go stats, let's go talk 3 stars of the game. If you listen to the Penguins post-game show, the 3 stars, play of the game, all brought to you by on the Penguins TV and radio network, as well as for their opponent, all brought to you by their respective sponsors. Here we go with our 3 stars, as we don't have a 3-star sponsor for this show, as we don't have one yet for the game puck of the game, or perhaps the shake of the game. All those segments coming up on Penguins postgame. It's a season edition of that one, and we'll talk about that later on. Let's keep it to what we're talking. We're talking women hockey. So here we go. Your 3rd star went to Abby Newhook. 1 goal, no assists. Also equivalent for 1 point. She wears the number 19 on Boston Fleet. Goaltender number 31, Aerin Frankel, picks up your 2nd star. 21 saves on 21 shots. Save percentage of 1,000, as she did not give up any goals. with the result of a shutout against Vancouver, same as the Montreal Victoire game. And your first star, I ultimately think this should be the game-winning goal, but technically the goal that started the game by Abby Newhook was your game-winning goal of the game, your GWG for short. But the first star went to 1 goal, 1 assist. Give it up, Boston Fleet fans, for number 44 and Abby Newhook, your 3 stars of the game. Let's talk about the shots on goal by period as we go to our stats. Boston leading the way after the first period of play, heavily outshooting Vancouver 19-2. Wow. Okay. Interesting. They also picked up 7 more shots on goal to Vancouver's 6. Okay, that's a little bit better than 2 for Vancouver. That's a little bit better. But after 40 minutes of play, it would be 26-8 in favor of the Fleet. Fleet leading the way after outshooting Vancouver 19-2. They're leading the way for the goals 26-8 in the shots on goal after 40 minutes of play. Vancouver almost evened things up in the second period with, at the end of regulation, Boston taking their foot off the gas pedal a little bit, but not enough, at least for the last goal of the game to be scored, which was by GLS, her first of the year. In any case, Boston picks up 5 shots on goal. They picked up 19 in the first period, 7 in the second period, and now 5 here in the third, ultimately outshooting Vancouver 31-21 for the shots on goal. But Vancouver outshot the Boston Fleet 13-5. Way better third period than the second period and first period galore. Of course, the scoring in terms of line score, 1 goal for the Fleet in the first period. They led 1-0 after 20 minutes of play. It continued to be 1-0 Fleet after 2 periods of play, after 40 minutes of play. And in the third period, Boston with 1 goal, making up our final score, 2-0 Boston over Vancouver in their first matchup head-to-head, as Vancouver's inaugural season against Boston head-to-head starts with a loss in regulation. Bit of a bright side here for Vancouver was they were able to kill off both penalties to Hannah Miller and Brooke MCQ for tripping and holding. Power play non-existent for Vancouver. Penalty kill for Boston. Not really needing to be shown here, as only penalties of the game were called to Hannah Miller and Brooke MCQ for the Vancouver Golden Eyes. The Golden Eyes 2 for 2 on the penalty kill. The Boston Fleet 0 for 2. 0 for 2 on the power play. Vancouver spent 4 minutes in the box with 2 players, Hannah Miller and Brooke MCQ, holding the penalties. Face-off percentage, 49 face-offs in the game, 35 of them being won by Boston, 14 of them being won by Vancouver. 49 face-offs, just about 27% of the face-offs being won by Vancouver at 28.6%. Just about 72% of those face-offs won by Boston Fleet at 71.4%. But Boston heavily outshot Vancouver 30-21. They won more draws than Vancouver did. Vancouver with 14, Boston with 35, making sure I have that right. And ultimately, Aerin Frankel gets the win. Her 3rd win in goal, as she was also between the pipes, I should say, for the Toronto Scepters. So Aerin Frankel doing pretty well. She's won twice in shutout fashion. She gave up a goal to Toronto, but her team scored 3 goals. By the way, that was a goal when Toronto was shorthanded. And per the new no escape rule, the team that takes the penalty is not allowed to change their first line that is on the ice prior to the penalty being taken. The other rule here, if you are on the penalty kill and you score, you free your player from the box. That's called the jailbreak rule. No jailbreak in this one, as Boston wins 2-0. All right, before we go play the game, let's take a look at the schedule. As mentioned, only 3 games have been played so far. 2 of them played out last night, including the one we are talking about. And we'll begin our out-of-town scoreboard for the week of Tuesday, December 2nd to Sunday, December 7th thus far by going to Ottawa, where the game could be seen by Canadian viewers on Prime. It's on Tuesday. It's only on Prime. Viewers in the Minnesota region of the state could catch this game on FanDuel Sports Network, and viewers out of market can catch this game on YouTube as well as the PWHL.com website. The PWHL website. Live streams will be available for all games outside of Canada and wherever prohibited. As of now, Canadian viewers can catch the game Tuesday nights on Prime. It's only on Prime. Viewers in the States can catch games on FanDuel Sports Network, NESN, MSG, as well as other areas in between. YouTube and the PWHL website are where you can restream the game after the game has gone final in the respective areas, including Canada and the States. If you are out of Canada or the States or wherever is prohibited and do have access to the PWHL website or their YouTube channel, you can stream the games as they happen live on the YouTube channel and the website. The Minnesota Frost beat the Ottawa Charge 5-1 at TD Place to open up December with a bang. Well, that's kind of how they opened up against Toronto. Well, okay, but again, Toronto did beat them. So they open up December this time with a win, beating the Charge 5-1. Thomas has the coverage for you there. He also has his own little version of this 2-0 shutout win for Boston over Vancouver, and that takes care of our score that we're talking about. Boston and Vancouver. Boston victorious 2-0. For the third time in our coverage on Sports for Beginners, Boston is 3-0 with a win on the road in our coverage and a win at home at the Agganis Arena. Okay, I'm getting close. I'm trying. And of course at the Tasonga Center. I think I had it right last time. I know it didn't come out the way that I wanted it to, but anyways, at the Tasonga Center, there we go, is where they have a victory. Their next home game will be in the same arena they played Vancouver in on Wednesday night. Well, we'll talk about that momentarily. Elsewhere around the games that have final, fresh off of their home opener, which was spoiled by the defending Walter Cup champion Minnesota Frost in shutout fashion. They pick up their franchise's first win in franchise history, scoring 2 goals in the final 5 minutes, I should say, of the game, after the New York Sirens took a lead in Climate Pledge Arena in Seattle, Washington. Seattle picks up a 2 and ultimately ends up winning the game 2-1. You can catch that game on MSG in the New York area, as well as TSN for viewers in Canada and everywhere else, YouTube or the PWHL website, if it's not prohibited for you. With that said, still to come on this action, we've got the Ottawa Charge and the Toronto Scepters from the Coca-Cola Coliseum. Toronto looking for a rebound from their home opener spoilment, as they were spoiled in their home opener. But it wasn't in shutout fashion. They looked for a win over Ottawa to get the jump on Ottawa in the Battle of Ontario, as that goes down tonight at 7 Eastern, 6 Central, 4 Pacific. Saturday, but we got an afternoon clash between the Vancouver Golden Eyes and the New York Sirens. Watch it on CBC in Canada. Catch it on MSGSN2 in New York. Coverage starts at 3 Eastern, 2 Central, 12 Pacific, 1 Mountain. And then Toronto and Montreal go head to head at Place Bell in Laval to kick off a afternoon doubleheader that wraps up with the Boston Fleet and the Minnesota Frost. You can watch that game on Sportsnet, NESN, and the FanDuel Sports Network. And I'm really looking forward to when our next PWHL recap will be. Spoiler alert, spoiler alert, spoiler alert. It just happens to be the Battle of Ontario. And when will it happen? Well, it will be the first time the two teams will clash, which is tonight. Find out more about that coming up momentarily. Time for a break. When we come back, we're going to go to the play of the game and the women's hockey player of the game. Plus, it's time for what's next for Boston Fleet, what's next for the Vancouver Golden Eyes, and around that time now, what's next for PWHL Recap. And coming up on Sports for Beginners, you won't want to miss a moment of the action, so be sure to stick with us. PWHL Recap, Goldeneyes versus Fleet continues in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. There's more great conversations and content right around the corner. Sports for Beginners will be right back in a moment.
Hi, Scott. It's Ali here. I just wanted to mention that I'm really enjoying the show and I'm really enjoying what you're putting together. And I wanted to just say I'm enjoying being a part of it as well. So please keep up the phenomenal work and make sure you guys keep this podcast going because it really suits you well. I wonder if I could make it. It's almost getting to 8 o'clock p.m. and I am still a few more steps away from home to get to my computer to listen to SienaT Radio's Cosmopolitan Culture Club. The best of the best music from around the world. Can't wait! I think I made it! SienaT Radio. Making your day brighter, one song at a time.
Take another look with Gerda Felix and Melanie Taddeo Malo, two powerful women of diverse backgrounds having genuine, unique, and uncomfortable conversations that everyone needs to have. Join Melanie and Gerda for conversations about what is missing from human connections.
Now, let's take you back to the action. To the rink and field we go. We find Scott McGregor.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to PWHL Recap, Goldeneyes and Fleet, the topic of conversation. It is now time for our play of the game. Thank you guys so much for being with us and bearing with us as we roll on. Game is brought to you by on the NHL's Pittsburgh Penguins and whoever they end up playing. It is brought to you by their respective sponsors on their TV and radio broadcasts. Same thing goes for the PWHL as well. We do not have any sponsors for it, so it's brought to you by its respective sponsor. With that being said, let's get to the play of the game. If we had a guest on with us right now, we would give them the floor. If we don't, it comes courtesy of a host. But before we jump right in to that play of the game, which I'm going to bring back up here to the actual summary with all the action. There we go. I want to let everyone know about the PWHL new podcast centered specifically around the PWHL, and it is owned by the PWHL and run by former Ottawa Charge hockey player and Boston Fleet player Emma Buckles. Check out Jocks Next Gen, the sister podcast to Jocks and Jills. Jocks and Jills. Check it out. Drop on the PWHL YouTube channel or wherever you listen to podcasts Tuesdays and Fridays ahead of action and nearing the end of action. Meanwhile, shows for Jocks Next Gen drop every Wednesday. Look at the first episode of the show where they had Caroline on the podcast. A link to that episode will be provided in the description of this episode. If you want to check out the Spotify link, I'm sure they will have a link in the description of Jocks and Jills so you could find it for yourself. So just a reminder, check out Jocks Next Gen every Wednesday on the PWHL YouTube channel and wherever you listen to podcasts. And make sure you sprinkle in Jocks and Jills Tuesdays and Fridays on the PWHL YouTube channel and wherever you listen to podcasts. These are two official podcasts of the PWHL, and one is hosted by Florence Schwelling and Emma Buckles. Emma Buckles is the host. Florence Schwelling is the co-host. Great fun, great conversations. I enjoyed episode 1. I hope you do. If you haven't already, check it out. Check it out. Some great stuff to keep in mind, and a great conversation, I may add, with Caroline Harvey. Shout out to you, Emma. Shout out to you, Florence. Enjoyed the show. Looking forward to the next one next week on Wednesday. All right, play of the game. I mean, that one's going to go to Abby Newhook right off the jump. Now, just a disclaimer, I haven't seen highlights yet of the game, but I was following the game despite not watching it live. And just a reminder of where it was live for this game. TSN for viewers in Canada and for viewers in the United States, particularly the Massachusetts area. This was available on the New England Sports Network. And with that being said, Abby Newhook's going to get the play of the game. And that will bring us to the women's hockey player of the game. Before we dive into that, I want to take this opportunity to let you know about, in case you haven't known already, odds are you have if you've been listening to the show right from the get-go when we started doing this, but be sure to check out Nick Blazewitz, Samantha Ash, and everybody over at SienaT Radio, including Robert Godridge, for some great shot. The Hourglass, the Classical Cafe, and my personal Saturday favorite, the Melting Pot. Kicking your Saturday off every Saturday morning on the East Coast from 11:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 10:30 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. Central Time, 4:30 p.m. to 5:30 p.m. in the UK, and of course 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. France and Sweden time. Don't miss out on a moment of the action. Reminder that Samantha is on in the UK from 7:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. 8:30 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. for those listening in Sweden and France. And for those listening on the East Coast, Samantha's show, The Classical Cafe, is from 2:30 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. Eastern, 1:30 to 2:30 p.m. Central, and that would mean that it would be 11:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. Pacific time. All right, let's get to the women's hockey player of the game. This is highlighted as our player of the game segment, and today I'm feeling given. We're going to give 2 out, 1 to each player. Honorable mentions may be mentioned at a later time. First, let's go to the Vancouver Golden Eyes. And the women's hockey player of the game is going to go to former Minnesota Frost player Sophie Jakes. 4 shots on goal. Really like what I saw from her. Not good that she had a -1 in this game, but she did manage 1 hit. Madison Samoskevich with 4 hits in the game. Not too shabby for Madison Samoskevich. Quite interesting that she has that many hits. Another person who is quite a hitting machine. This one is on Boston. She wasn't exactly quite a hitting machine. Actually, she had no hits to the exact, but she was quite a shooter. 5 shots on goal for Abby Newhook, your women's hockey player of the game for the Boston Fleet today. One of those 5 shots went past Aerin Frankel for her second goal of the season, and then Jill S, I should say, also 5 shots on goal. One of those 5 going behind Aerin Frankel. Honorable mention for the Vancouver Women's Hockey Player of the Game. That's going to go to Aerin Frankel, the goaltending keeper. For Boston Fleet, it's going to Abby Newhook. Honorable mention going out to Jill S, as well as the puck stopper for Boston, Aerin Frankel. We do have a little bit of time to bring out some standout players of the game. So my standouts, I have 2 from Boston. The 2 from Vancouver, I should say, include Sydney Bard, 3 shots on goal, 3 hits in this game. And also Madison Samoskevich. Over on the Boston Fleet side, let's go to Susanna Tapani. There we go. I had it right. I had it right that time. Anyways, moving on. And we're also going to go to Ella Huber, one of the other shooters on Boston's side in this one, that racked up 5 shots on goal. Wow. So she was quite a shooting machine too. All right. We're just about ready to wrap up PWHL Recap. We'll do so on the other side. But first, let's end this segment before we jump the gun to the end of the show with what's next for the Vancouver Golden Eyes and what's next for the Boston Fleet. And we're going to go by month. So let's go to December, starting with the Boston Fleet. They open up the month of December with a win against Vancouver. Their next game will be against the Minnesota Frost. They will then be hosted by the Minnesota Frost in one of 3 road games, 4 road games to be exact, actually. 2 of those road games, I'll say 3 of them, happen before the Christmas break. First, they will play at home in the same arena they hosted the Vancouver Golden Eyes against the Minnesota Frost. Action on Sunday of week number 3's action that they will play in. They will also play 3 times in the week of Tuesday, December 16th to Sunday, December 21st. In PWHL action, their 3 matchups include at the New York Sirens at the Prudential Center in Newark, New Jersey, and at the Minnesota Frost at the Grand Casino Arena in St. Paul, Minnesota, formerly known as the XL Energy Center, home of the Minnesota Frost, and of course, the NHL, the Minnesota Wild. At 8 p.m. Eastern is when that game starts between Boston and Minnesota. Game against New York is at 7 Eastern, 6 Central, 4 Pacific. Against Minnesota, 8 Eastern, 7 Central, 5 Pacific, 6 Mountain. At 5 Eastern, 4 Central, 2 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Mountain. Catch Boston versus Seattle on Sunday, December 21st, 2025. At Climate Pledge Arena in Seattle, Washington. Our next coverage of Boston will be when they face off against the Ottawa Charge after the Christmas holiday. Of course, Sports for Beginners season coverage will be on a hiatus around that time, so that will just be a bonus episode, as is all of our content here for the PWHL. That will be when the Ottawa Charge take on Boston, and that will be one of 3 Ottawa Charge games we cover here on this podcast to kick us off. The next time we talk Golden Eyes won't be until after the New Year's holiday, so that will be in 2026 when the Vancouver Golden Eyes go to Detroit, Michigan, looking for a little revenge against the Boston Fleet, who will host a game at Little Caesars Arena in Detroit. Game time 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Pacific. But meanwhile, for the Golden Eyes, as they wrap up 2025, they lost to the Boston Fleet. They'll play again on Saturday, and then they play on the 20th, 27th, and 1st of December Those games will be at home from the 6th to the 27th. They'll be playing the New York Sirens on Saturday, December 6th. That's this Saturday, December 6th, at the Pacific Coliseum in Vancouver. Watch it on CBC on Canada Viewing, or in New York, catch it on MSGSN. Vancouver goes on Prime on December 16th as the Ottawa Charge battle the Vancouver Golden Eyes. The Montreal Victoire take on the Golden Eyes from the Pacific Coliseum in Vancouver. Game time for the Ottawa game on Tuesday, 7 Pacific time, 10 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Mountain. Their game on Saturday, also available on CBC television for those viewing in France, or viewing in Quebec rather. The Montreal Victoire will take on the Vancouver Golden Eyes from the Pacific Coliseum at 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Central, 12 p.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Mountain. Boy, nothing beats a little takeover hockey. Going to Rogers Place in Edmonton, Alberta, the Vancouver Golden Eyes will host the Minnesota Frost on December 27th at Rogers Place in Edmonton, Alberta, 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Central, 12 p.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Mountain. Watch it on Sportsnet, FanDuel Sports Network in Pittsburgh. Not Pittsburgh, Minnesota. In Canada, watch it on Sportsnet. You can also watch on Sportsnet their game against the New York Sirens on New Year's Eve at 1 Eastern, 12 p.m. Central, 11 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. Pacific, I should say. And that is from the Prudential Center in Newark, New Jersey. And that is a road game after 4 games at home against Minnesota, Montreal, Ottawa, and New York. As for the Boston Fleet, for December, they will play at home against Minnesota on Sunday, December 7th, this Sunday. On Wednesday, December 17th, Boston begins a homestand against the New York Sirens, Minnesota Frost, Seattle Torrent, and then Ottawa Charge, wrapping it all up on Saturday, December 20th. And that will be the next game we talk Boston to you. We'll talk Ottawa and Vancouver in Vancouver and Boston. But the next time we talk to you here on PWHL Recap, stay tuned. After this 30-second timeout, you're going to find out who's next on PWHL. And then it's time for this show of PWHL Recap to close up. What's next on Sports for Beginners? Who's up next when we drop the puck again on PWHL Recap? Find out in 30 seconds, right after this. Don't go anywhere. There's more great conversations and content right around the corner. Sports for Beginners will be right back in a moment.
SienaT Radio will never give you up. They will never let you down, nor will they run around or desert you. So join Nick Astley for The Melting Pot every Saturday on SienaT Radio. Hang on a minute. He's not Nick Astley. Oh, jings, I've done it wrong. Anyway, just join Nick for The Melting Pot on SienaT Radio.
Now, let's take you back to the action. To the rink and field we go. We find Scott McGregor.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to PWHL Recap. Thank you so much for being with us. Time to wrap it up here on our show. Our topic of conversation, Vancouver versus Boston. We'll be back with these two teams duking out again from Little Caesars Arena in Detroit, Michigan. That coming your way down the stretch. Who doesn't love a little takeover PWHL hockey? That once again is the Vancouver Golden Eyes and the Boston Fleet. It is the nightcap of January 3rd, 2026 action in the PWHL, and that is a short week for PWHL action as they start on Friday, January 2nd, conclude on Sunday, January the 2026. I could be wrong, though. It could also start up another week on January 6th, but it could also still be the same week. We'll see. Anywho, that will be the next time we talk Vancouver and Boston here on our show. When we talk to you next on PWHL Recap, that will be following tonight's game between the Toronto Scepters and the Ottawa Charge. Recordings happening tomorrow after the game. So it'll be a day after the game. But that's not all. You're getting a little PWHL and NHL treatment. Tonight, the Pittsburgh Penguins, battle the Tampa Bay Lightning. And on another episode of Sports for Beginners, the podcast, Season 4, you will get that recap as a special Penguins post-game show edition. Penguins and the Lightning tonight on Sports for Beginners, the podcast, as well as the Battle of Ontario brings you another double dose of PWHL hockey. Toronto and Ottawa duking it out tonight. So we will see you after the Battle of Ontario, as well as after Lightning and Penguins. Stay tuned to our Facebook page to find out when those shows will be dropping. Start to wrap up here. Coming up also in the week, Dolphins post-game, our post-game show from the week of Saints versus Dolphins has yet to drop. We will drop that momentarily, but we'll also have for you Dolphins versus Jets coming up, as well as I'll be back with you for a recap of, yep, you guessed it, Bills post-game, recapping the Buffalo Bills showdown against Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're down to the final episodes of season number 4 of Sports for Beginners. This is a bonus show, yes, and all of our PWHL coverage on Sports for Beginners is bonus content, as is our coverage that you can hear on its new home of On the Ice and Behind the Benches, Penguins post-game, forward to what we get in tonight's PWHL hockey game. As a reminder, if you don't watch the game live on YouTube, or rather for those in Canada and in the States and wherever prohibited, if you are not able to watch the game live because it's not in your area on YouTube or on the website, you will be able to watch it on YouTube after it is posted on the YouTube channel, or the team will post highlights of the game, highlighting goals, penalties, probably huge saves, and so much more. You won't want to miss a moment of the action. So with all that being said, we cannot wait to see you there. After Charge and Scepters and Penguins fans who tune into the women hockey coverage, I will talk to you after Penguins and Bolts, following women's hockey coverage of the Battle of Ontario between the Toronto Scepters and the Ottawa Charge. Lots of hockey content on Sports for Beginners coming. Lots of content coming your way on the season side. We got a visit with Erica Lindsay Ayala on deck on episodes for us, followed by a visit from our Penguins post-game. That's next as far as episodes for season 4 go. Penguins and the Bolts, following our conversation with Erica. We have launched episode 29. So we're into episodes 30 and 31 of season 4, if I'm not mistaken. I'm just going to double check here to make sure while we're still recording. Just going to double check here to see the episodes. And by the way, as we start to wrap up, I want to just let everyone know, if you have seen some of our episodes in the past from 2022, I just wanted to let you know that some of those episodes have been taken down because of reasons I won't get into, but regarding music and copyright. So I just want everyone to know, I completely understand what I'll be dealing with. And if I have to take it down and take down music, I will make sure I do so. But all that said, I'm going to remind you one more time. We're going to remind you one more time of something that I'm sure you've heard countless times on the Penguins radio network or any radio network or TV network when they do the copyright. And this is very strict. It is very, very strict when it comes to copying anything, audio, anything that is not yours. Any rebroadcast or otherwise descriptions or any accounts of this game, the Penguins and Bolts game, the Charge game and the Toronto game, the Charge and Toronto game, and of course anything else in between, without the express written consent of the actual right holders is strictly prohibited. So I completely understand that. And without the express written consent of anywhere we would use audio from, or without giving credit, it is prohibited. So we will make sure to credit as much as we can. That goes for music, post-game audio, and so much more. With that being said, that is it for this one. Thank you very much for joining us. A lot of hockey coming up on Sports for Beginners, so be sure you stick with us. We got the Charge and Scepters coming up on PWHL Recap, followed by on Penguins Postgame, a season edition of Penguins Postgame. And yes, I did double check. It is indeed episodes 30 and 31. 31 will be our Penguins Postgame show. Episode 30, PWHL Kickoff. I'll give you some thoughts on the season so far. And of course, we'll get into much, much more and with where we stand at the time after where we stood when Erica and I recorded. By the way, we recorded it before the end of week 2 of PWHL Recap. You'll hear that conversation first before you'll hear my voice running. Yes, I said running. The season edition of Penguins Postgame. All season editions of Penguins Postgame on Sports for Beginners, the podcast, can also be heard on the Ice and Behind the Benches. Next for the season content, probably going to be the last one we do for season 4, as we are closing in on the closing moments of season 4. Closing episodes, I should say. We will be talking Penguins and Lightning, so make sure you check it out. As always, PWHL listeners, specifically ladies, unless there are some men joining us on the show, no disrespect to either side, you know who you are. Always remember, love one another. Have a great day, everybody. And of course, always remember, ice time earned. Thank you so much for being with us. We'll talk to you after Charge and Scepters. Much for listening to Sports for Beginners. If you would like to learn more about the show, you can visit the podcast Facebook page or visit the official website. You can also send us an email at sportsforbeginnerspodcast 8231 @gmail.com. As we always remind you, it is not goodbye, it is until next time.